Hello guys, this is the Polyglot Programmer, and today we're going to talk about what are signals in Godot and how do we use them. We're going to come up with a couple of different examples, and hopefully by the end of the video you guys will have a pretty good idea of what it is and how do they work, right? So first of all, let's start with the basic definition, right? So what are signals, right? So signals in Godot are their their own version of the observer pattern, right? And I mean, I think the best way to think about signals is that if I have to explain to you like you're a 5-year-old, right? So let's say, imagine that you have a group of friends that you want to tell them when it's time for a party, right? So instead of going to each individual friend or texting each individual friend and say, hey, this is the time for the party, this is the time for the party, this is the time for the party, instead of doing that, you can create some sort of list of friends, of friends that are interested in knowing what's the time for the party, right? And those friends in the list, they're the observers, right? So whenever there is a party or an event, which is how you would call it, then you would just tell everyone at once. In this example, you could use a WhatsApp group or whatever, but the idea is that you would tell everybody at once instead of going to each of your individual friends and and um, and tell them individually. So that's kind of how the observer pattern works, right? In a very high level. And in Godot, you have nodes, as we discussed also in one of my previous videos. If you haven't watched what are scenes and nodes, please go and watch it. So you have nodes, and these nodes, they emit signals, which are in turn events, right? And whenever any event occurs, right? So um, and this feature allows you to communicate between nodes without hardwiring one node to the other, right? Without creating a hardwire reference from one node to another node, right? In this case, you also promote a lot of decoupling in your code, right? So you don't have those hardwired references. And basically, if I'm node A and I'm promote and something happens and I need to promote an event, I don't care who's listening. I'm just gonna put it out there. Whoever's listening will listen, right? Whoever subscribed to my event will pick up on that, right? So a good example of that is when a button is pressed, it emits a signal called pressed, right? And if you connect to that signal as an observer from any other node, right? In Godot everything is a node, then you can have a reaction to that event, right? And and then you have a bunch of other built-in signals that the button is just the most is just it's just what came out of the top of my head. But you have signals when two objects collide to each other. You have signals when, for example, a character enters a specific area. And you can also define your own signals. And we're going to see how we can do that, right? So in order to do that, we're gonna create a little scene here. I think the first thing we're gonna do is that we're gonna create a little scene, and let's create this guy. Let's call it. Yeah, bear with me here a little bit. Let's create this guy. Let's call it main scene. I like to have a main scene. Let's just save this. Okay, now I'm actually going to create another scene, right? And this guy, we're going to create a player, right? We're going to create a player scene. Let's create a simple player here. This is about signals, so I'm not going to waste too much time explaining everything in here. I'm just going to make sure we have everything working. So we're going to add a sprite. The sprite, as usual, we're going to add the Godot icon over there, and it's complaining here that it doesn't have a collision shape 2D, so we're gonna add one of those. And also it's complaining that it doesn't really have a shape, so let's add a shape. So this is rectangle, fine. This doesn't really matter for us. We're not gonna. I think we're not gonna collide with anything on my example here. Yeah. So then, okay. So now we have a scene. Let's save. Wait, let's name this guy. Okay. Player. Awesome. So now let's add a script to our player, right? So the go here. Yeah, we don't need. No, I don't want any of you. I don't want any of that. Okay. All right. So in our player, here we're just gonna make our player move in circles, right? So that's basically what we're gonna do. So there's a pretty straightforward code to do that. Angular speed goes by, then var speed, let's say 400. Then we're gonna do that in the process. Again, I do talk a little bit about these methods in my previous video, but process basically gets called on every frame, and you can do anything you feel like you need to do on every tick, right? And then velocity. So okay, vector 2.up. And we're gonna rotate based on our rotation times speed. And now we're just gonna update our position. Velocity times delta. Great. So with this, if we come back to our main scene and we add a player here, we are going to see something happening, hopefully. Oh, okay, that's weird. Yeah, I made a little mistake here. As you guys can see, I use speed here, and this wasn't supposed to be speed, this is supposed to be delta. So now everything's gonna work. Now we're gonna see our player going around. That's awesome. That's great. Okay, so now that we have our player moving, so we're gonna go back to our main scene. We're gonna the goal here is that we're gonna add a button, and we're gonna, as soon as we press that button, we're gonna make that the player movement stop, right? So this is the goal here. So here we're back on our main scene. Here, so yeah, let's drag this guy. Let's put him over here. All right, so here we're gonna add a button. Press me. Okay, let's go. We don't need to do anything here. Okay, so we create a button, and now we're gonna create a signal, right? So how can we do that using the user interface? So we basically select the node that we want to create a signal, and if we go back to if we come to the inspector here, we have all these properties, and on the top here we have a tab called node, and voila. Here we have all the signals that this little guy here can trigger, right? So, and in this case, we're gonna just double click on pressed, and here here it shows all the other nodes in the scene that have a script attached to it, right? So in this case, we're gonna choose player. We're gonna It already has a name here. You can change it if you want, but usually you just leave it as what it is. The default is on the name of the object and the signal that is being emitted. Connect, and there you go. And it already came to our player script, and it added this little function with this pass here, so it doesn't do anything. And all we're gonna do here is that we're gonna set set process, right? In set process, we can enable or disable the tick on this node, right? So, and there's also another node called is processing, which returns a bool, right? So in this case here is gonna set to what already is, but since we're talking about GTScript, which is really similar to Python, we're just gonna do not here. So this is always gonna invert whatever is on the whatever process is set to, right? And now now if we run the scene and we press, we can see that our player is stopping and the signal is being emitted. And as you can see, the player doesn't really know like that the button exists. I mean, this is called on button press, but it could be called on ABC blah and would be the same. It doesn't really know, it doesn't really care. And the button also doesn't have any reference to the player itself. It just has one subscriber here that says, okay, when this signal happens, when this event happens, all you're gonna do is that you're gonna let this guy, you're gonna send him, you're gonna call this method, this function, and that's it. And that's all it does. So just so we can show the power of a signal, we're gonna do something else, right? We're gonna make the button send a signal to 2 different places, right? And the way we're gonna do that is that we're gonna create another little scene here. We're gonna create a rectangle. I like rectangles, as you can imagine. So I use them in a lot of my videos. Okay, so there you go. Let's call it square. Great. Let's call it square. Great. Now go back to the main scene. Let's add a square here, right? Cool. So the goal here is that every time we press this guy, we're gonna every time we press this guy, we're gonna change the color of the square. I'm gonna make something. It's gonna be kind of hard coded, and it's maybe not. It's not really practical, but it doesn't really matter, right? So all we wanna show here is the power of sending a signal to 2 different places, right? So to do that, we're gonna go back to our square. We're gonna create a script here, right? And it already has a little bit of code here. Here on ready, we're actually we're gonna set a color to you're gonna set a color here. So we're gonna say color equals color, and I'm gonna set it to red at first. Let's actually do, yeah, let's do red. Doesn't matter. Okay, we're gonna set this. Let's create a variable here, right, so you can keep track of it. So color name, right, and then here I'm gonna say color name equals red. Great, right? And that's all we need to do for now, right? We don't need a process. And now if we run the scene, we should see the square red. Great, perfect. So now if we go back to the scene, let's select our button again. Let's go to node. Let's double click here again. And now we're gonna select square, right? And I'm gonna connect. It created our little function over here. So now we're just gonna do a quick if statement here to change, right? So we're gonna say if color name, color name equals red. Then I'm gonna set the color to color, and I'm gonna set to green. And color name equals green. Right, else. Alright, now we're just gonna do the opposite. And that's it. And that's it. So now if we go back here, let's see. Ah, there you go. See, signals working the magic. This is awesome. Great. Okay. So now what are we gonna do, right? So what we're gonna do here is that we're gonna create a timer in here, and based on the timer event, which is a timeout event, we're gonna make the square visible or not, right? And the cool thing here is that we're gonna connect the timer with the square using code, right? So first, let's create a timer here, right? So timer. Okay, timer. We're not gonna use any of these guys, but you see that there is a signal here called timeout. I'm gonna wait time, let's call it like half a second, and we're gonna set to auto start. Okay, great. So now here on the square, right, on ready, we're gonna first get the timer, right? So we need to get the timer, right? Get node, and this is how we get a node, right? Because we're here, we need to kind of go back to root and get the timer, right? And here, oh, it's complaining that timer's not declared. Yeah. Timer dot connect, right? And this is how you connect via code on Godot 4. Timeout, that's the name of the timeout. And here we just say on timer timeout. Right, this is usually the name, and we're just gonna get this guy. I'm gonna create another function here, func on timer timeout, and here we're gonna do the same thing we did with the process, but we're gonna do it visible, right? Visible equals not visible, so that's gonna tick. Why is it? Oh, I stopped complaining. Great. So let's see if this is going to work. Fingers crossed. Boom. Now. Great. So the next step here. So now, so far we learned how to emit a signal using the user interface into more than one node. We learned how to connect and also connect to a signal using code, right? So the next step here is us actually creating our own signal, right? And I think a good place for us to do that is here on the square. So to create our own signal is super simple. You're just gonna declare here, say signal, and you say, for example, on color changed. That's it, and then your signal is declared, and now you just need to emit your signal. So you're just gonna come in here. So every time that there's a color changed, I call emit. So here you can see that like I'm emitting a signal whenever I get an event from the button, which is super cool because you're tying one signal to another signal, right? Which is awesome. So now we're gonna need to use this guy, right? So to use this guy, what we're gonna do is that we're actually gonna add a label to the scene, right? So let's say some type of score, right? So let's say let's add a label, right? Let's start with like 0. Yeah, let's, I don't know, let's this is fine. Let's just add this guy over here. Great. So now we're gonna add a we're gonna connect to the on color changed signal from our label, right? And to do that, we're gonna attach a script here to our label. No, we don't need process. In here, we're gonna declare square. I like to do that when I'm referencing other, and count when I'm referencing other nodes. So here we're gonna set count to 0. Count to 0, then square. Again, we're gonna get the node. What is that node called? It's called square. Great. And now we're gonna connect to square. Connect. Let's just, so there's no mistake here, let's copy this guy. This is the downside of working with strings, right? So on square, on color changed. And now we're just gonna define this guy. Func count +1, and since this is a label, we just need to set the text equals, let's convert to string, and count. And this should work as soon as I add my colon over here. Okay, so let's see. Oh, there we go. So that's it for this video, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed it. On this video, we learned what signals are. We learned how to trigger a signal using the user interface over here. We learned how to trigger a signal to more than one node. We learn how to connect to a signal via the code. We learned also how to define our own signal and emit, and also connect that to that signal, also using code. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'm gonna be posting a lot more videos like this in the coming weeks. And that's it, guys.